This is the Homestead Journey Podcast, the podcast dedicated to the pursuit of self-sufficiency, self-reliance, and sustainability. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Homestead Journey Podcast. This is episode number 138. My name is Brian Wells, and I am coming to you from S3E Farm and Homestead here in beautiful upstate New York. Now, folks, you may have noticed that last week there was not an episode of this podcast, and I wanted to explain why. If you follow us on Facebook and Instagram, you will have seen last week that we were not here in beautiful upstate New York. In fact, we were up in beautiful southern Maine on the coast on vacation. Now, my plan had been to edit an episode in the week leading up to us leaving for vacation. I already had something in the can. I was going to edit it, put it up, and I just ran out of time. And so my backup plan was, well, I will go ahead and record an episode on my phone, kind of on the fly, and we'll do a really light edit, put it up, and I won't miss an episode. But then as I thought about it, and I had some discussions with some other people, I just realized it was more important for me to spend time with my family, to be in the moment. And so I hope that I didn't make you too angry by skipping yet another episode after we had done that a couple of weeks ago for our anniversary. But again, this is the theme this year of this podcast, and that is that I am trying to give myself more grace and not to put quite as much pressure on myself as I have in the past. And so my apologies, and yet not really apologies. But anyhow, thanks for understanding. And we did have a great vacation and arrived home yesterday. I'm actually recording this on Saturday. I don't usually record these until Sunday, but we do have a fairly full weekend. And so recording this a little differently than I normally do. We arrived home yesterday, and now we're just trying to play a little catch up. And so let's talk about that as we jump on over to this week's Homestead Happenings. Obviously, while we were on vacation this past week, there wasn't a lot going on the homestead here, except for the fact that we had a neighbor and my mom and dad who came down and took care of the animals. But in the week leading up to us leaving for vacation, there were a lot of activities that I wanted to share with you to maybe give you some ideas with regards to what you should think about as you prepare to leave your homestead. So one of the things that I wanted to do was make sure that we had plenty of animal feed. Obviously, we didn't want the feed to run out when we were gone and put yet more stress on those who would be taking care of animals. So I went ahead and did a feed run to make sure that we had enough feed for while we were gone. Another thing I did was try to set up things on the homestead so that it was easier for them to do the chores. Our method of feeding, particularly the poultry, is not the most efficient. We keep all of the feed in the feed bin in the garage, and then Bonnie usually carries it out by the bucket full every day. And so to make things easier for our, we'll call them farm sitters, I went ahead and placed galvanized trash cans at each place and put a bag of feed in them just to make it easier for them to be able to feed those. They could just scoop right out of that can into the feeders. And it's really something that we should do for ourselves because it does make it much easier. Carry one 50-pound bag out there, dump it in, and we're good to go. But usually what happens is Bonnie forgets to tell me, and it's just easier for her to carry a bucket of feed out instead of carrying a bag out. And so it won't be long and she'll just be carrying it out bucketful by bucketful. But we did try to set things up to make it as easy as possible for those who would be taking care of the animals. Another thing that I did was come up with detailed instructions, including a diagram to make sure that they knew who gets what feed, the quantity, and so on and so forth. I also made sure all of the waterers were topped off. Of course, in the week leading up to us going on vacation is when the beans would decide to come on. And so I got the pressure canner out and we pressure canned up a bunch of beans. So it was a very, very busy week leading up to us heading out on vacation. Our vacation was great. We really enjoy the southern part of Maine, although we're not huge beach people. In fact, we spent more time junking is what we call it. We went to a lot of antique shops. Brian J enjoys it. Bonnie enjoys it. I enjoy it. And so we had a lot of fun and made a lot of great memories doing that. But it was just a great, great week. Very, very relaxing. And just so thankful for the opportunity that we had to get away. On the way home, we did have the opportunity to stop by the Mindful Homestead and to see Jack and Jackie and Emma and see what they've got going on there. And I also had the opportunity to stop by Oak Park, where we are going to be holding the Homesteaders of New England Fall Gathering. So I got to see the space for myself. And folks, I am so excited about this upcoming gathering of homesteaders of New England. It's going to be a great, great time. And things are really starting to fall in place. And the speakers that we have lined up are going to be awesome. Some of them you may know from YouTube and podcasts, people like Morgan Gold and Austin K from Homesteading. But we also have some subject matter experts lined up that maybe you haven't heard of before, but they're people who have a wealth of knowledge in areas such as seed saving, beekeeping, keeping sheep. And we have some other people that we're talking to. They're going to be talking about some awesome New England specific issues as well. And so if you have not already checked this out, head on over to mindfulhomestead.com/hone2022 to check it out. Or you can go to mindfulhomestead.com/speakers for the speaker list. It's going to be a great time. This is September 10th and 11th in Greenfield, New Hampshire. The tickets for the entire weekend are $25. So $25 the entire weekend. And we're going to have some really, really awesome New England-centric speakers. I'm so excited about it. And as I walked around Oak Park and I talked to Jack, I just got more and more and more excited about it. So if you live in the Northeast and you can fit it into your schedule, Home 2022, going to be awesome. And it was so great to stop by and to see Jack and Jackie and Emma. We got back again, as I said, last night, and didn't get a lot done last night. We got the animals fed. I went up to the garden. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit. This morning, Brian J and I actually went and helped a friend of his and the daughter of a friend of mine who was working on her gold project. She's a Girl Scout, and so we helped with that this morning. Got back this afternoon, spent some time mowing, and then got out in the garden and really started trying to play a little bit of catch up as far as us being gone. The garden right now, quite frankly, looks a lot like a jungle, and I'm trying to reclaim that jungle. But I did harvest some onions and some broccoli tonight, and we've got a lot of beans out there that need to be picked, so that's probably what I'll be doing tomorrow. And then we'll be looking at probably harvesting some beets and some more onions, about ready to start letting them dry out. And so it's just kind of, we're hitting the ground running, trying to get back up to speed. But it is good to be back here on the homestead. So thankful for the opportunity that we had to get away. But there's something about sleeping in your own bed at night. Glad to be back here in beautiful upstate New York. All right, let's jump on over to this week's Charting the Course. On On this episode, we are going to talk about weeds. Weeds are something that we usually think about as being a bad thing. They steal nutrients from the plants that you actually want to grow. They can crowd out or choke out the plants that you actually want to grow. And sometimes we see them as an example of our failure, that we're lazy, that we're inept, that we didn't spend enough time tending to our garden. Weeds are something we generally look at as being a big negative. When we arrived home from vacation, as I mentioned earlier, one of the first things that we did was go up to the garden. Bonnie and I actually went up there together, and I ended up heading back to the house before Bonnie did because the weeds were so rampant. I felt very overwhelmed and I just could not deal with it. I believe this is the worst garden I have ever had weed-wise. I think bar none. And so I was feeling very defeated. I was feeling inept. And quite frankly, I was feeling like a fraud. Here I come on this podcast week after week after week to share with you my pearls of wisdom. And I can't even keep a weed-free garden. In fact, I was so frustrated, I was very tempted just to head down to the garage, grab the weed eater, and put the whole blessed thing out of its misery. This morning, though, as I was taking a shower and I had time to kind of reflect and to think about things, a thought crossed my mind. Now, many times, I don't know about you, but many times, some of my best thoughts and ideas come as I am taking a shower. And the thought crossed my mind this morning that there's a reason why the garden is so weedy. You see, I have tried very hard this year to be intentional about being involved in some of the causes that are near and dear to my heart. And those causes, those events at times have pulled me away from the homestead, and they have competed for the time, effort, and energy that I normally would have put into my garden. I have tried to be more intentional about spending time with Bonnie. We have actually been taking regular date nights, something that we have never done since we were married. I sad to say that, but we have never been as intentional about taking date nights as we have been this year. We have taken the kayaks out a couple of times, something that we didn't do at all last year. And so I have really tried to be more intentional about spending time with her. And of course, I have really tried to be very intentional with regards to spending time with Brian Jr. On our way to Maine for our vacation, we actually stopped by and did our first college visit. And folks, it's hard for me to believe, but we have entered the year of lasts. Was this our last family vacation? In a few weeks, this may be the last time he exhibits at our county fair as a youth. In about a month, we'll see him off for his last first day of school. And as the reality of that has set in, I have made decisions with regards to the homestead this year that have resulted in a weedy garden. A few weeks ago, I shared with you on this podcast about how the night before chicken processing day, Brian J. asked me if I wanted to go on a drive and just hang out. And of course, my response was, yep, let's do it. We have spent many, many hours over the last several weeks working on his Eagle Scout project. And folks, I don't say any of that to pat myself on the back or to try to say that I am dad of the year, husband of the year, volunteer of the year, anything of that sort. Rather, I share that with you because, in part, that is the reason why I have a weedy garden. And as I thought about that this morning, my perspective on the weeds in the garden began to change. And so as I went out this evening and I started trying to take back the ground that they have taken, I did it with joy. Well, as much joy as you can have in pulling weeds. But instead of approaching it from the perspective of beating myself up and feeling like a failure, I started reflecting on the good memories that I have made this year, the lives that I have hopefully been able to impact through some of the causes that I have been involved in, the memories that I've made with Bonnie and Brian J. And it's almost as if every weed told a story, but a good story. And so I say all of that to say this. When given the chance, maybe you should consider letting the weeds grow. There are other things that are more important than a weed-free garden. And I was reminded of that today. That's it for this episode, folks. I hope that you have found this helpful. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to me. Brian at thehomesteadjourney.net is my email address, or you can contact me via all of the socials. The links are in the show notes. Until next time, everybody, keep up the good work.